Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to episode 301 of the Falcoholic Live. I'm your host, Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin, joined by longtime Falcoholic contributor Eric Robinson, now over at the four-letter network ESPN. He is at _Eric_Robinson on the Twitters, rocking the NFL Live jacket. Eric, was that intentional or,
No, I literally just got home a few minutes ago, man. So I'm still in my work clothes.
Yeah.
So.
It's part of the bit that we have to just, accuse you of big timing everyone. So we got that out of the way. Welcome in. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. Watched our Falcons on Monday night, and they had a particular performance that we haven't seen from the organization in quite some time. When the last time we've seen them make a comeback? A late second half comeback. It seems forever.
2016, apparently. Yeah. So 2016, statistically speaking. So, yeah. It's been a long time. It's been a long time coming. I was pretty much convinced that the game was over after the Falcons turned it over on 4th and 1. And they couldn't get that yard. And I was like, yeah, we're probably not getting this ball again. And really, they shouldn't have. But as you know, win probability doesn't account for people making the wrong decision, Eric. And that's exactly what happened with the Eagles getting a little too much hubris, I think, going for that pass, which was a good play call. I don't think it was a good situational move, and that is where the problem came for the Eagles. And we're gonna get into that. We're gonna get into all that. Talk about this game, how this win may have very well changed the Falcons season in a lot of ways, emotionally, standings wise. Very important thing here. Real quick, guys, want to bring you word from our sponsor, BetOnline, folks. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. They've got every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. I believe the Falcons are a 3.5-point underdog against the Chiefs at home, which honestly, that feels about right. That feels pretty much on point for me. I definitely think.
Do you know what it was before Monday night?
I think it was 4.5, but it may have even shrunk more. I know it was like 4.5 to 5 last week, and then I think when I looked at it earlier, it was like 3.5. But it may have shrunken to 3. Who knows? But it's not bad. That feels pretty fair to me. But I always recommend don't bet on your team because your heart's in it. It's not a good way. Not a good way to make money betting with your heart. But no matter what you want to do, guys, BetOnline's got everything for you. And if you think you know your stuff, BetOnline's got a new $200,000 mega contest. They've got a pick 5 games against the spread contest every single week for your chance of weekly prizes and a share of that $200,000 pot. And when the game's over, BetOnline's got a new online casino. They've got online blackjack. They've got online poker. And over 150 slots games if that's your thing. So what are you waiting for, folks? Head to that website today. It's BetOnline to get in on the action. When you sign up, make sure to use our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right. Well, yeah, let's first of all, because we were talking about it right before the commercial. The Eagles, like for this, there was a segment on like Stephen A, and I don't watch a lot of Stephen A, but I just started watching because like everyone was talking about the Falcons yesterday. Literally everyone. We don't get that very often, so it's like I gotta watch every pundit talking positively about the Falcons. We may not see this again in our lifetime, so we got to make sure to take advantage. And, so the argument on the Stephen A show was like, did the Falcons win or did the Eagles lose? And, Stephen A was saying that the Eagles lost. Everybody else in the show is saying the Falcons won. But I mean, the Eagles certainly contributed. Where do you come down on that argument? Do you think the Eagles lost this game or do you think the Falcons won or do you think it was a little bit of both?
Well, for starters, when it comes to Stephen A, and yes, I am with the 4-letter, but I do understand his takes are taken a certain way.
Yes.
Kirk Cousins, for him, in his eyes, Kirk Cousins has to throw for 985 yards and 25 touchdowns in order to be considered a decent quarterback in his eyes. He will look, for whatever reason possible, to not give Kirk Cousins any credit for anything. Which is fair. I mean, I get it. Whatever. So my thing is, I think it's a little bit of both. To answer the question, I think it's a little bit of both. I think that the Eagles definitely the game slipped away from them for sure. But the one thing about it was that a lot of people didn't want to mention was the game wasn't decided on the third down, on the failed third down conversion. You still had to go 70 yards, and you still had to go 70 yards and score a touchdown. And not only that, you still had to get a stop. So sure, you may not want to give credit to another team in a particular matchup like this, but plays still have to be executed. It still requires a team to go win the game. You can, sure, a game can be handed to you, but still you got to make the necessary plays to win. Kirk still had to go out there and lead them down the field, and the defense still had to get a stop. Kevin, you and I can count. We're loose. We won't have any fingers left over of how many times we've seen this team take a lead late in the fourth quarter, and we look at the game and said, "Okay, defense, get us a stop," and then we walk away disappointed. But that was one of those occasions where, sure, in a matchup like that with the circumstances like that, you need a little luck.
Oh yeah. No, everybody needs it. Everybody needs luck.
That play is ran again for Saquon. He catches it and scores. Nine times out of 10, that was just that one time where he dropped it. You can question the play call. I don't mind the play call because that's what you bring in Saquon for. You brought him in to put the ball in his hands in crucial moments and help close out games. He just didn't perform. But for the Falcons, they needed a win. But they absolutely needed a win like that, where it truly felt like, man, a burden was taken off their shoulders. Like you can breathe a little easier now because it's one of those games where it's like, yeah, they took it to a team that was better than them. Let's be honest, and they won. They walked out. They don't have a great history in Philly, but they don't have a great history on Monday night. But they got the job done, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like a critical game, and we're definitely going to get into the importance of that too. But like, that's that. I agree. Like, I think the play call to Saquon in a vacuum was obviously a great play call because he was open for a score. Like,
Open. Yeah.
The only thing that gives you pause is the situation, right? That if you run the ball and you could still score. They were gashing the Falcons on the ground, right? It seemed like they were getting whatever they wanted. And if you didn't get it, you still can run another 40 seconds off the clock and then kick the field goal. Or, if you get the first down, you just win the game. So I think that's why analytics obviously says just try to get the first down because you just win the game at that point. But the play call, I think people like focusing on the play call being bad is like the play call was good. It's just the situation was a little bit sketchier. But what about I think the less talked about part is the field goal attempt because, that too is kind of interesting to me because the analytics say the field goal actually like reduces your win chance because you still only are up 6 points. So you're less than a score lead and you probably are giving the opponent field position as well. So I thought that angle was kind of interesting that actually just going for it on fourth down, even if you don't get it, is going to help your win probability more than going for the field goal, which that was another angle that I had heard as well. So
they clearly, it was obvious they did not want to give the ball back.
Yeah.
And if they did give the ball back, they wanted to give the ball back. They preferred to give the ball back with a 10-point lead. Yeah. Like, scoring a touchdown with the extra point, going up 25-15 with under 2 minutes left. And Falcons having full timeouts, 2 or 3 timeouts, I guess.
None.
Yeah, none of that. No. Yeah. So at that point in time, yeah. I mean, ideally, that's I don't blame the logic there. I don't mind going up 10 under 2 minutes with the opposing team not having timeouts. Like it's and the opposing team having to struggle in the red zone. So it's not as if you're making it a field goal game where you got a guy on the other sideline and Koo that can knock it down. You're telling them, do what you haven't been able to do all game. You haven't been able to drive the length of the field and score a touchdown in the red zone. You needed a big play at midfield to score the only touchdown of the game for yourself at that point. So it was one of those things where I understand the logic behind Nick Sirianni, and this shouldn't be a great surprise. He's been a risk taker as a head coach, and most times it's worked. So I understand. I get it. I'm not going to sit here and knock the play call. I'm not going to sit here and knock the logic. But what I would have been against was if that play was called and it was Kenneth Gainwell that was the intended target. Then I would have said, okay,
Yeah, definitely.
Why is Saquon here? I don't understand then.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that I would have questioned, but I understand the play call. Again, if the game is replayed today, and he probably would have done the same thing, and Saquon probably would have caught it and scored, to be honest with you. So
yeah, I think I agree. Like 9 times out of 10, that's a touchdown and a great play call.
The last time they executed the play, he caught it and was tackled at the 1. So why not run it back again?
Exactly. So it's just one of those things. That's why this game is so compelling, because those little errors, those little tiny decisions can completely snowball, and we've seen that happen against the Falcons so many times. That it was kind of weird to see it happen to someone else. But I think the stat was that the Eagles and the Falcons were the two teams that blew the most fourth quarter leads last year. I think the Eagles blew 3 and the Falcons blew 3.
Since week 15, both
have exactly.
It's on the season where they gave up a lead under 2 minutes.
Yeah. So it was like the biggest choker meets the other biggest choker. It's like, it's a choke off, like who's going to do it? Who's going to the world almost ended. Yeah.
That was a very interesting stat because for the Eagles, again, it's something that has happened more often than not. And people haven't discussed it, honestly, but it's definitely a thing now. Now you're looking at it and saying, wow, this defense with all this talent, they've been blowing leads since last season, and they have. We'll see what they do this Sunday. Hopefully they get their act together and turn it around this Sunday and pick up a critical win on the road in New Orleans, but we'll see.
Yeah. And that's the other side of the coin here is obviously, like you mentioned at the start of the show, this is a huge emotional win. This is the biggest win this team has had since, I don't know, 2017. Probably. Yeah. I mean, it's just they've had good wins over the last couple of years, but it's no one really cared because there were no serious playoff aspirations for this team. And we figured that out usually by mid-season. So it was they put on some good games. They had some upsets, whatever. But there wasn't really any hype attached to it because everyone knew this team was not really going anywhere. This year, this is early. There's a lot of hype. The Falcons obviously the division looks a little bit tougher, but it's 2 weeks in. I think we should probably hold off on having any.
The Saints started 2-0 last year.
Yeah,
and they didn't.
So we may want to hold off on any definitive takes for another couple weeks, but it certainly looks like those two teams are not. The Saints don't look like an absolute dumpster fire like a lot of people were expecting. So that's unfortunate, but it's unfortunate. We'll continue to pray on their downfall, but we'll have to keep going until then. But you get this win. I think a big part of it is, Kirk Cousins. I think the first half of this game, you could tell I think a lot of his issues and why, first of all, last week, I mean, you weren't here, but we talked about it a lot. It's that game plan looked like they were figuring out that the coach didn't think Kirk Cousins could execute play action. We find out that actually it was just a really bad game plan. And it's okay, Zach Robinson, all right, your first game, not your best work, what have you. They completely changed the game plan the next week. Right. They go back, and then it's okay, well, that I can respect that. You can have a bad game, have a bad game plan, then completely I don't think we ever saw Arthur Smith change a game plan like that in the entire time he was in Atlanta. It was always the same strategy, always the same thing. No. And it wasn't it was always bad, but last week it was oh my God, I'm terrified of what we're getting from Zach Robinson. And then this week is they changed the entire offense. They went to all 11 personnel essentially. They went to under center almost the whole time. There was definitely still some pistol in there, occasionally, but it was mostly under center. And there was tons of play action after the week before. No play action at all. I mean, it's crazy how quickly things change.
The game plan for last week was a little head scratching, to say the least. But I will say this, and you heard Zach Robinson say it last week, game tempo dictates a game plan for the most part. Depending on how things go early on, you may have to adjust. And I think part of the reason why they didn't go under center and do a whole lot of play action under center, because, granted, it is it's arguably the strength of Kirk Cousins as a passer. However, you're turning your back to the pass rush.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You still have to complete a particular drop step. Turning your back to TJ Watt is scary. Okay. I can completely understand why Zach Robinson is like, okay, I don't want to make Kirk turn his back, fake a handoff, complete his drop back, and TJ's in his face as soon as he turns around. Because that very well could have happened.
That is an absolutely legitimate thing. I know Joe Schmo in the chat has brought that up too as being a possible reason they were trying to avoid that. Right. So it's like that's definitely a legitimate thing. And you don't always have to make play action the core thing that you're doing on offense. You should have some variation.
Right. And I'm sure they wanted to, which is fine. But at the same time, you saw the game plan being changed as the game went on. I'm pretty sure going into it, they didn't think that they wanted Kyle Pitts to chip as much as he did on TJ Watt. But it changed in the second half. And you saw a lot more of that because of the fact that TJ Watt was just doing whatever he wanted to do. You saw Kyle Pitts chip a lot more in game one because of that factor. You saw it a little bit in the second half of this game against Philly, where Bijan was assigned a little bit more of a responsibility to help Chip and help Caleb McGarry on that side. Those things happen. So I get why a team, especially when it's a quarterback that has limited mobility, he can't even at 100%. I'm not going to expect Kirk to pull the ball down and take off and pick up a bunch of first downs with his feet this year. That's just not what he's going to do. He may be mobile enough to step in the pocket and maneuver in the pocket, but I'm not expecting him to run away from an edge rusher. He damn sure is not going to run away from TJ Watt. So I'm pretty sure that was part of their thinking. Like, hey, let's just have him 5-6 yards in the backfield already, just because of the fact that we can't stop this pass rush in TJ Watt. So I get it.
No, it's legitimate. It was just literally the worst possible game plan if you wanted to convince people that Kirk Cousins was healthy. It's
it is right.
He's gonna not move at all.
The run game wasn't clicking in game one as well. So you and I both know play action is pretty irrelevant if you're not running the football the way you want to. It's pointless. Why are you faking running the football? I know you're not going to run the football. You're averaging less than 4 yards a clip. I'm not worried about that. Against Philly, Bijan was able to do whatever the hell he wanted to do. Algier was able to do whatever they wanted to do. They were averaging close to 7 yards per carry. So the play action was greatly effective in that game.
Yeah. And I think that's definitely what they want. Right. I mean, that they want the run game to be the engine and the passing game to build off of that. And we saw that even with the Rams last year, they were totally content to let Kyren Williams take over games and just throw stuff off of that with Matt Stafford. They didn't always lean on the passing game. The problem, and honestly, Arthur Smith's offense was that way as well. The problem was they just never really had the passing game to actually take over if the running game struggled. And also that defenses basically figured out Arthur Smith's run game last year. By the time,
his concept seemed elementary almost. For the most part. So he wasn't fooling anybody.
Yeah. So this year, and I think this is kind of what this game proved. One thing that we really never really saw or saw very limited, things with the Arthur Smith offense was this passing game has the potential now to be that explosive game that you can lean on and score in a not even a 2-minute drill, a 90-second drill. With 30 seconds to spare. Maybe they scored too fast. I know some people were oh, should they have run more clock? They had no timeouts. I don't really think you can risk running clock. I think you just kind of have to get in the end zone. You can't really play around with trying to run clock when you don't have any timeouts in that situation. I mean, it's
I think at that point in time, they were just let Kirk work.
Yeah, we were we're just going to score. If we can score, we're going to score. We're just going to pray. And the prayers clearly worked because that Jesse Bates interception is one of the most baller plays that I've ever seen in my life. He knew exactly what throw was coming. He started running as soon as he saw Jalen Hurts go to his left. He was like, okay, I'm gonna end this game right now. Like, I know what you're about to do, buddy. You're about to make the wrong decision. And credit to Caden Ellis, who had to like stunt like almost all the way across the formation and put
Correct.
the pressure on at the end to make sure
Correct.
that Hurts had to air that out and didn't
Yep.
get to place it perfectly.
He
Um,
wasn't able
yeah.
to follow through.
Mm-hmm.
I and this may be rare as well. I got to give a little credit to AJ Terrell also because of his ability to bump
Mm-hmm.
Devontae slightly
Yep.
at the top of his route as he was rounding, which allowed Jesse to kind of sort of eat up a few more yards and eat up a little bit more space to close in on that interception. That was look, if you want to give the crown to someone like Mika or Antoine Winfield, cool, I'm fine, whatever. My thing is, my guy Jesse deserves to be in a conversation of the best free safety.
Yeah.
He at least has a seat at the table. Okay.
Yeah. I think, yeah. If you're not at least putting him in the top 3 conversation, then you're just a hater because he's been in that conversation for years now. So, yeah, just so and I think like, you put all that together, like obviously it's a massive like emotional win for this team. It's Raheem Morris's first win, probably the most impressive like first win we've ever seen from a new head coach. I mean, you get that. I think the other big thing about this is that I think we saw in that second half, particularly the longer the game went on, that Kirk Cousins started to believe in himself. I think like more, and I think that's critical for him because I think I haven't finished watching every one of his dropbacks this week. I did in week 1, and like on live viewing in week 1, I thought like when I watched the game live, I was like, there's velocity issues. Like these balls aren't coming out on time. Obviously there's bad decisions happening. Like I think like he might not be healthy enough to like complete outside balls. And when I watched it on rewatch, like with all 22, it was like, okay, like the velocity is not plus, but it's fine. Like it's not problematic. So actually I don't think he's unhealthy. It's just like he's not able to drive it with like super velocity. It's a confidence thing, right? Like and especially the bad decisions, and like you could tell the first half of this game against Philadelphia, he was sort of just like hesitant. Like he was like, I'm not costing us this game by throwing picks again. Like I'm going to throw it out of bounds. Like I'm not going to take this sack. I thought his explanation for why he airmailed it on that goal to go third down was a good one. He was like, if I take a sack there, we don't get points before the half. I felt the pressure, and I got rid of that ball early because I didn't want to cost us points at the end of the half. He said, in hindsight, I wish I had held the ball a half second longer and found Pitts. But like in the moment, it was like a quick read, and I had to make a split decision. And I was like, I'm not going to cost us points. We're going to airmail this. I understand the decision. It's easy for us to rewatch it in slow motion and be like, oh, look at how open Kyle Pitts is. That's not how it goes. That is not how it goes in the real world. But I think in the second half, you could see like he was much faster to see guys open, and he was willing to rip it. I mean, he ripped it like that first Darnell Mooney touchdown was, it was great. And then Mooney obviously I think showed off why he's so critical to this team is like, if he breaks a tackle, it's a touchdown. Like he's extremely fast in case people forgot. So
I think that was the play where the switch was flipped. Because Vic Fangio is not necessarily a guy that's going to dial up a ton of pressure. He's going to allow his front four to beat his front four and get after the quarterback that way. That was a particular play where he dialed up some pressure. They went cover 0. It left Mooney one-on-one with C.J. Gardner-Johnson in the middle of the field. As much as I love C.J. Gardner-Johnson, I don't like him running post routes or covering post routes one-on-one in the slot against certain receivers. I don't love that matchup. Kurt stared down the barrel of the gun, man. Like he knew it was coming. He knew the hit was coming. He knew the pressure was coming. But that was one of those few times where Kirk said, you know what? F it. I'm launching this thing. If he catches it, he catches it. If he doesn't, he doesn't. He caught it. He made a play. And I honestly feel, and this comes from, watching football for a while, like you can feel the emotion change. You can feel a team say, damn, okay, this is what we needed. This is the spark that we needed. I felt that watching that play because It was a play that we didn't have those type of plays against Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
They had
exactly.
to take whatever Pittsburgh gave them. That was one of those plays where they said, you know what, our talent is better than your talent on this particular play. We're going to execute and we're going to make a play. And they did. Kirk was, I agree with you. In the first half, Kirk mentally, he still looked as if he was questioning a few things. Not about Zach Robinson, not about the scheme or whatever, but he was just questioning, like, am I here? Do I have it all? There's no way you're going to sit here and tell me his Achilles healed that much at halftime for him to come back in the second half and say, okay,
he got those micro bubbles, man.
Right. There's no way. There's no way you're going to tell me that. So that's what the second half showed me. This is a quarterback that's mentally not 100%. At that point in time, he wasn't. The Achilles is one thing. Again, I question that because you and I, we saw it in practice. Like they did plenty of play action and rollouts, and he looked completely fine after a while in practice. Yeah. So questioning his mobility in terms of that aspect, I didn't after the first game because I'm like, I saw it in practice. He looked okay. He sprinted after Antonio Hamilton throwing an interception in training camp. He sprinted 60-something yards. Kirk the Achilles is okay, but mentally, I don't think he was there until the second half, and he showed up in a big way.
Yeah, and that's such a big confidence booster. Like, you practice that 2-minute drill all camp, and I think there's no bigger confidence booster for an offense to be like, all right, like, we got to do it now. Like, this is it. Like, we practice this. We can do it. It's one thing to say it. It's another thing to do it. And, like, now that they've done it, that confidence that, like, it doesn't matter what the situation is. Like, we can go, like, we got 90 seconds left. We can score this touchdown. Like, no problem. We already did it. We did it in one of the most difficult places in the NFL to play, in a place where this team just never wins. Like, you go in there, you get that done. It's just a huge win. And I think after week one, the vibes were terrible after week one. Like, I think, obviously fans felt a certain way about it, which is not surprising in the slightest. But I think the team too was like, you could tell the players I don't think the players were like freaking out, but it's just like, it sucks to start 0-1. And then it's like, now we have to go. Like, it was tough. And I think it's just getting to 1-1. It just lifts so much weight. It's like, okay, like, we don't have to worry about Owen Tombstone type stuff. We don't have to worry about starting 0-3. Yeah, we got that big win. If we lose to the Chiefs, no one's gonna freak out. Whereas if they start 0-3, the story is like, this team is cooked. Like, there's very little chance that they're digging out of this. You get that one win, and all the statistics change. For whatever that's worth. Like, I mean, that's a huge thing from a statistical thing. But I think you particularly when you add up the fact that you gotta face Kansas City next weekend, and Kansas City doesn't look like invulnerable or anything. I mean, like, they should have lost to the Bengals. Like, I think the Bengals got robbed a little bit there. But
I don't think we realize how close they are to being 0-2.
Yeah, and it's not like
they're 2 away from being 1-1 right now.
Yeah, and like, I think that the Ravens, the Ravens are 0-2, but like, again, that team is pretty good. So like, I don't know what happened against the Raiders. That was just a choke job. But yeah.
I know this is a Falcons show, right?
Yeah.
If they go 0-3,
it's time to panic. Yeah. It's time to panic.
Lose their mind, because they have the very next week, they have Buffalo at home, and then they go on the road to Cincinnati.
Yeah. So it's dark times there. Like, this is exactly what would happen to the Falcons. So you'd be like, oh yeah, it's just like, they don't even have the hard schedule to lean on. It's like, oh yeah, well, yeah, you play the Chiefs, but like, the Raiders are supposed to be your layup, and you fumbled the layup, so so yeah, that's concerning for them, obviously. But yeah, I mean, it I don't think, like, the Chiefs don't look invulnerable. They're not firing on all cylinders yet. They've still got the Isaiah Pacheco thing, I think, is a pretty significant loss for them. Because this is a different type of team they're going to be going up against. This isn't like, I think Philadelphia, like, they didn't have AJ Brown. That's obviously a huge loss for them, but there's probably no run game in the NFL that's more difficult to scheme and like stop than Philadelphia, with Jalen Hurts, who I think we know is like probably the most like cerebral runner, I would say. Like, he just is so good at like knowing when to take off, avoiding hits. Like, he's just such a good running quarterback. And like if he gets out on the run, we saw it in the game. Like his accuracy throwing on the run is absurd. Like that's where he's best. Like if he gets out there and has time to get that ball off, like it's going to be pinpoint a lot of the time. So, and then they have Saquon. So it's like you can't even just sell out to watch the quarterback and spy. It's like, no, you got to deal with Saquon. And, Devontae Smith is still a great wide receiver. And they have good tight ends and all this stuff. Like, I think, and they have the NFL's best offensive line. I think we can be pretty confident. Like, there was some questions about Mekhi Becton and how would he be at guard. So far, so good. Like, brilliant move, moving him to guard. I mean, he's been significantly better, I think, than he was at tackle. So,
I'll say this real quick, man. The Cam Jurgens experience has been a roller coaster.
Yeah,
yeah. It's a little weird. It's a little weird.
He looks like a good blocker. But the mental stuff is, I think, the biggest difference between him and Kelsey right now.
The missed snaps in game 1, the penalties in game 2, and it felt even weirder with Jason Kelsey being there, present and in the stadium as well. Like, the Cam Jurgens experience still needs to be worked out a little bit for Philly, but
yeah, and so and like they're not going to probably play an offensive line that good again this year. There's definitely some good offensive lines they go against, but like the Philly offensive line is uniquely good, I think. Like those tackles are just incredible. I mean, the best right tackle in the NFL, Lane Johnson. Jordan Mailata, what a nice story that is. And the other thing is like they are the biggest offensive line any team is going to see all year too. But they're not like a power blocking team a lot of the time. They're running zone a significant amount of the time too.
They're a very athletic offensive line for given their size across the board.
And that's like, I think a lot of people are like panicked about like Troy Anderson and like, oh, he didn't look good against the run this game. That like very few linebackers are going to play this scheme like well, because you have to watch the quarterback. You have to watch for Saquon, who is like probably one of the most difficult running backs to tackle in space. And you're not going to get a ton of help from your D-line because you're going up against the best offensive line of football. So like, I think people probably shouldn't panic about like the linebackers not looking their best against Philadelphia. That is like, I think people need to understand like this could be a top 5 offense. Like in terms of the rushing offense, I think this is likely to be the number 1 rushing offense. I guess we'll see, but
I guess because individuals look at the Falcons in the roster and they want them to be at a certain level, especially at particular position groups. But I think, like you just mentioned, the run game for Philly, if anything goes right for them this year, is likely going to be the run game. They're going to run the football. They're going to be good at it. I'm not discouraged because they couldn't bottle up Saquon and that offensive line. I'm also not discouraged because the Steelers' defense was able to enforce their will. That's a good defense. And
defense.
That's a great defense. And a lot of people were discouraged and let down about that. And I'm like, this defense has been playing together for how long?
Yeah.
Cam Hayward and TJ Watt, they've been Alex Highsmith, Minka Fitzpatrick, they've been together for a while. So I'm not heartbroken about the fact that they ran into a wall. They went into a buzzsaw, which is the Steelers defense. That's just how it is. Yeah. But so I say that with, don't be upset if Patrick Mahomes makes a few plays. That's just Patrick Mahomes. He's good. Those players and those units are going to get theirs. Okay. You're not going to shut them down for 4 quarters. That's just how it is.
Yeah. That's just how it is. I think you look at the Falcons defense, like the Chiefs offense is another uniquely challenging offense. It's more in the passing game. And I think the fact that they can't necessarily lean on the run game in this one is going to make it a little simpler for the Falcons. They're probably going to play. Yeah, the Falcons really haven't played a lot of too high shells. Like I know that's kind of the thing this year. Falcons have played cover 3 like 45% of the time. Like
they're going to play it this week.
They're definitely still going to play it. I think we might see more cover 2 in this one, just given what we know about Kansas City's strengths. But like the Falcons offense so far, pretty good, right? Like they're 11th in scoring. They're allowing less than 20 points a game through the first 2 games. I know the Steelers were the first game, but they didn't allow a touchdown in that game. And 9 of the Pittsburgh's points were off of Kirk Cousins turnovers, or that, Ross Dwelly bump, whatever the heck you call that. in terms of passing yardage allowed, they're 7th. Again, you do look at the passing offense they faced week 1, but like week 2, it's still Devontae Smith and Jalen Hurts. I mean, so, they're 7th in passing yardage. And then against the run, you look at, this is where I think a lot of people go wrong looking at the run. Like, you should always look at per attempt stats, because especially early in the season, because you could be vulnerable to teams that have a lot of attempts against. So if you just look at raw rushing yardage allowed by the Falcons run defense, they are 27th. They allow 161 yards per game. And you're probably like, wow, that's awful. That's a lot of yards per game. And you would be correct. That is a lot of yards per game. However, if you look at yards per carry allowed, the Falcons are 12th. They allow just 4.1 yards per carry. So they've actually played the run pretty well. They've just seen, I believe, the 3rd highest like attempts per game against. The Falcons have faced 39 rushes per game so far. 39. That's an absurd number.
That's like a lot of rushes.
Yeah. And they've held up. Like, they've allowed 4 yards per carry on that. And I think that's even more impressive considering you're against one of those two teams. Your best run defender, your best run defending linebacker was not in the game. Nate Landman's out. And you're playing probably the best rushing attack in the NFL with Saquon and Jalen Hurts. So I think the run defense is going to be fine is the short answer for that one. And I think what this team wants to do is use their defensive line to really dominate the run game. And I think they're capable of that. They did it against the Steelers for the most part. And I think it will make things a little bit simpler up front when they don't have to worry about quarterback runs being like a designed part of the game plan. Like, we all know that Patrick Mahomes can scramble really well, but they're not going to be deliberately running him more than like once a game. Like, they shouldn't, that's just not what you want Mahomes to do. Now, he's really dangerous when he gets out on the edges and starts throwing that ball like he does, but the pass rushing will be a little bit more traditional. And they really haven't been able to do a traditional pass rush in either of the first 2 games. They had to deal with Justin Fields in week 1, and they had to deal with Jalen Hurts in week 2. So they've had to kind of play a very specific type of defense to limit the running quarterback. And I think they might benefit, I think, from going to a more traditional defense against the Chiefs. I think they were more built for that, but we'll have to see how it plays out. I mean, obviously there's a lot to get to with that, but it is interesting.
Tackling is going to be huge.
Yeah.
This team, in a variety of ways. We've seen the magic that Patrick Mahomes can create when he's off script. He's the best quarterback in the league in general, but he's also the best quarterback in the league when it comes to off script plays, in my opinion. And those are the plays that they're going to gash you. They're going to kill you. So tackling is going to be essential in this particular matchup. But that front four is able to get the Mahomes. You got to get him to the ground. Don't let him get second life and allow Kelsey to break off a route and pick up a first down, because they live by that. That's what they're going to do. I think this defense going forward, there's still a few things that needs to kind of sort of be sorted out and harped on going forward. I do want to see more turnovers for sure. That would be great. Also, as you mentioned, the pass rush has been decent, but it's also been 2 games. So I'll give it time. Judon has been who he is.
Yep.
But the back end on that defense, man, the defensive line, you can make a case that the defensive line is the strength of the defense. So we're going to need them to show up on Sunday. They're probably going to have to be the best part of the unit on Sunday, that defensive line, because it's going to dictate a lot.
Yeah. It's a critical matchup, and the Chiefs tackles are vulnerable. That is something that they haven't necessarily had every year. Jawan Taylor has been prone to some blunders, and Kingsley Suamataia
had the game from hell against Trey Hendrickson. Yeah.
So the tackles could be vulnerable. That's a different thing for that. I mean, that's the thing with Mahomes too, is like he can survive pressure, but you obviously don't want that, right? That's not what you want. But you look at how the Falcons are matching up with this team, and I think where you're looking. Like left tackle is obviously a weakness. They do have a good interior, so it's going to be a tough match for the Falcons. Going up against Creed Humphrey, my son. We miss you in Atlanta, buddy. But we're not going back to that. I can't. We can't change that. We can't change the past.
Right.
But like Jawan Taylor and Kingsley Samatia are vulnerable. So there is, I think, an opportunity for the Falcons to get rush on the outside. And like, yeah, I mean, I think Judon. I think people maybe like don't understand the kind of rusher Judon is, like, because people were like, oh, he looks so slow. Like, why? Is he out of shape? No, like this is who Judon is. Like he is a power rusher. Like he is relentless. He is powerful. He's going to make plays against the run, and he's going to get the sack if you give him time. Like he will figure out a way to do it. And he's not like the flashiest. He's not like a Von Miller style pass rusher where he's going to, bend the edge and like get, a sack in like 1 second. He's the pass rusher that's going to wear you down all game, get in your face, like just dominate you, and then eventually he's gonna get there. And far, I mean, what, 2 sacks already, something like that. So 2 sacks in 2 games, on pace for 17. So so I think people maybe were a little bit not understanding his game. I mean, I know he came in with a lot of hype, but like he's a guy that is like a slow burn pass rusher that's gonna eventually get there, and he can get there early in the game too. But like it's just like he's relentless and he's gonna get you eventually. So
he's a crafty edge rusher. He's not known for speed. He never will be known for that. I mean, the guy's 270 something. I mean, I don't know a whole lot of fleet-footed 275-pound edge rushers, but that's just Trey Hendrickson is not that type of edge rusher as well. He's also one of those old school pass rushers who he's going to beat you with technical skills and with football IQ. He's not going to wow you with speed, but that was enough to harass Patrick Mahomes and kind of sort of limit that offense as much as they could against Cincinnati this past week. So I think Judon is going to be critical in this particular matchup here, especially if he sees some one-on-ones against Kingsley. It could definitely go in his favor. It's going to be interesting. This is an interesting matchup. The perception of the game, as you mentioned before the show, it changed considerably once the Falcons won against Philly.
Yeah, and the offense looked like it had life. Like that was a big part of it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. The entire perception of the game changed at that point because you were, with 2 minutes remaining, 3 minutes remaining, you were thinking like, man, we not only do we lose here, but you get a Kansas City team that is fresh off a win, but they're fresh off a win that they probably shouldn't have gotten. Cincinnati was the better team. They just, the dice rolled in the Chiefs' favor late. So I'm pretty sure the Chiefs were going to look at this particular game on Sunday and say, let's make a statement. We've had 2 close games. Let's kick the door in. Let's make a statement on Sunday night. But that perception changed a little bit once the Falcons won. And now it's a game, honestly, you're looking at and you're saying, hey, if they win, great, I'll take it. But this could be one of those games where it's like you're going into the 4th quarter and you're like, hey, the Falcons are still kind of sticking around a little bit. It's a little weird. Not expected.
No, exactly. And I think like for the Falcons defense, like they're going to be tested in the passing game in this one. They really haven't been so far. The Eagles passing game was limited without AJ Brown. And the Steelers passing game is the Steelers passing game. It's not really functional. It's like prayers to George Pickens most of the time.
Trust me, that will expose itself as the season goes on.
It's not going to fly long term. I mean, it shouldn't have flown against the Falcons. I think if like the Falcons switched games, like, and they played the Steelers second, they're probably winning that game. But like, yeah,
one touchdown scored in 21 drives.
Yeah,
for the Steelers.
Not great.
That's not great.
But yeah, I'm gonna record a full game preview on this, and I'm working on a Chiefs guest possibly. But I'm wondering, like, would you put Hughes on Worthy with safety help, and then see if Terrell can lock down Rice, or would you flip that and try it the other way? Because I'm not sure like who should be on who. I mean, I wonder, like, obviously Hughes. Both guys are big corners. And Hughes, to his credit, has played well like the first 2 games. He hasn't really had a tough matchup in either game, you know. But he's allowed like 3 yards on like 7 targets or something. So he's at least been able to lock down bad receivers. So that is a step up from what we saw from him, last year. But
he's looked better. He's
yeah.
looked better than someone else in that secondary. I'm not going to say any names.
The PFF grades don't lie. Mike Hughes. Yeah. So we give $24 million to Mike Hughes, or
it's interesting. I think that might be better for this particular contest, honestly, because I am interested in seeing how much zone they actually play on that back end, because I got to be honest with you, man. Like, AJ's not the best corner in zone coverage. We saw it the other night. He got a little lost at times. We saw it in game 1. The big play to Pickens before halftime was because somebody was lost in zone coverage because he was so busy playing underneath, even though nobody was in your area.
Yeah.
You're defending grass, but it is what it is. Anyway, so I think I think for that particular matchup, I think it might be better to have Mike Hughes, maybe not necessarily shadow Xavier Worthy, but I would definitely like him in cover one elements throughout the game where he's matched up against that speed from Xavier Worthy. Because the one thing about Xavier Worthy, I haven't seen a ton of diversity in terms of his route running. Like, he's mainly just been doing pretty much 9 routes and your occasional crosser just to get him free, just to get him in space. So it's going to be interesting to see what they ask from him in this game. But I do expect to see a ton of Tuchel.
Yeah.
Simmons and Bates on that back end. Also keep in mind, Simmons has the most interceptions against Patrick Mahomes over any DB in the league.
He knows him well.
He knows him. He knows a thing or two about Patrick. He knows a thing. He had an interception in both games last year against Kansas City. So he knows a thing or two about Patrick. So we'll see how that helps the defense as well. We'll see how much of Simmons is helping in the particular game plan when it comes to defending the Chiefs offense and Patrick Mahomes. But yes, going back to your question, Mike Hughes, I think he's the better option against that speed than AJ.
Yeah. And I think like his play, like he's earned the number 2 spot. I think in camp we were questioning a little bit, should Clark Phillips get more of a shot? Like, because Mike Hughes wasn't very good last year. I did try to remind people that Mike Hughes, the last time he got to play outside in Kansas City, actually, funny enough, in 2021, he was good. Like, he was a legitimate number 2 corner. He did get roasted by Gabe Davis. That did happen. But other than that, it didn't keep them from winning the game, So
I mean, if a guy plays well all year and his first, real bad game is not until the divisional round.
AFC, the divisional.
Okay, it's all right. He had a bad game on that day. Cool. Like, I'm not gonna trash him for it. He's been good all year. But yeah, so Hughes has been really good in run defense as well.
Yeah,
I've been very impressed with how he hasn't looked tentative as a corner and run support, and
great.
Especially against Pittsburgh for sure.
Yeah.
He looked pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, you look at his like PFF grading, and again, PFF grading is not the end all be all, folks, but you look at his run defense stats all over. Like, his run defense started like badly when he was a rookie. It was like, wow, this guy's, we can't play him in the slot, because of his run defense. It's kind of one of the reasons he lost the slot job initially back when he was drafted. It's gotten better every year, and like you could tell that's been a point of emphasis for him. He's like, I'm a big corner, like there's no reason I shouldn't be a good run defender. And he's right. And he is a good run defender now. He's probably the best run defender in the secondary at this stage. So, good for him committing to improving a part of his game that, like, I think discerning defensive coordinators would respect, but a lot of fans will never pick up on.
Right.
And like the ability to have good run stuffing out there on the edges is critical against outside zone teams, which in case people don't know, that's like more than half the teams in the NFL are outside zone teams. You got to have good tackling on the outside if you're going to stop that. So, that's obviously a big reason why he got the start there. And we'll hope that his good play, he's going to get a much tougher test this week, no matter who he's lined up against. But
Yeah.
if he holds
Yeah.
up, then it's like, oh, well, the biggest hole on this defense, number 2 corner, maybe it wasn't a hole after all. Maybe we're fine. So
It hasn't looked
yeah,
like one so far in 2 games.
yeah. So
And it
we'll
was the
see.
biggest concern.
Yeah, this
So
is the big test. This is where
it is.
this is
It
where
is.
we're gonna find out, I
It's
think.
a
And
big
then the
test.
Saints next week, where somebody's gonna have to match up with Rashid Shaheed or Chris Olave. So they're about to get a significant test in the passing game the next 2 weeks.
We might see some Tuchel in that game too.
I think so too. Yeah, I think we're gonna see some more of that. They've played almost entirely cover 3, but they played almost 50% cover 3, but they're also like playing 2 run heavy teams, so it's not surprising. But that is kind of interesting. Yeah, I think you look at the other side of the ball. For the Chiefs have a good defense. There's no denying that. I think it is weak against the run so far, and that is probably where Kansas City needs to be the most concerned. Because the Chiefs are giving up almost 5 yards a carry so far, but they've only had, and that's only going up against 27 attempts a game. They're gonna get more than 27 attempts from the Falcons if things go well. So that is something I think the Falcons are going to try to emphasize is let's get the Chiefs. Let's get them on the ground. Let's try to obviously, this is the standard method everyone tries to use against good offenses like Patrick Mahomes. Like, let's not give him a ton of possessions to build a big lead on us. Like, let's try to keep our defense fresh. Let's get this run game going. And I think that's clearly where you attack. But it is a good defense. They're going to need the offensive line to step up again. So yeah.
In spots, it's a good defense in my opinion. Chris Jones and George Karlaftis are a hell of a duo. And they spearhead this defense, and they should. Those 2 guys have been, especially Chris Jones, complete game wrecker. Trent McDuffie on the outside as well. He's going to ask this. A lot is asked of him this year with L'Jarius Sneed departing, but there are times where this defense does give up its share of plays. I think they're 20. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think they're like 26th overall in total defense. They give up like almost 400 yards a game. I think they're in the middle of the pack in terms of scoring defense as well. I think they give up like 22 or something like that a game.
22.5, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So this has looked like a defense. And granted, you got to look at their opponents. They played 2 offenses that, there's some elite play in several spots on those
Baltimore and the Bengals off out of their funk finally, So,
right.
But yeah, you're right. Like, they are allowing, I think, the second most passing yards per game. They are allowing, I think they're in the bottom 5 in terms of total yardage. The scoring is obviously better, but they were very, very fortunate against the Bengals that Joe Burrow fumbled that ball and they recovered it, because otherwise, I think people don't realize how that changed the entire game. Like, if he doesn't have that critical error, like, they're probably cruising. So.
I think they're also thankful that Jamar Chase lost his cool and kind of sort of impacted the game as well. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know, it probably didn't, because I know that the interception from Taylor Britt, amazing play, by the way.
Yeah, one-handed pick, incredible stuff.
But the Bengals, I wasn't surprised by how they performed.
Yeah,
that's what they do. They play Kansas City so well. I think they play Kansas City better than any team in the league. But yeah, they were their defense was a little fortunate because the Bengals shot themselves in the foot a couple of times. We'll see if the Falcons are able to avoid those particular mistakes. Did you trust a guy like Kirk to not put the team in situations that could be detrimental? So I think this offense is definitely going to have to, they're going to have to click. They're going to have to score some points. But I think also they are going to have to manage the tempo of the game, quite honestly. I know the defense is viewed a certain way when it comes to stopping Patrick Mahomes and the offense, But I think the Falcons offense is truly going to have to set the tone to an extent. Now, we'll see what the game plan is. I expect a little bit of everything, honestly, but I also would not be surprised if, at some point in the second half, they start playing a little ball control and keeping that Chiefs offense off the field. It very well could happen. So this Falcons offense, they found their groove at the right time, and hopefully it can carry over to the next game. I do appreciate what I see from this running game so far. Man, this running game can almost get whatever it wants at times, whenever it
Yeah.
feels like it. Bijan looks faster.
He looks incredible, man.
B-
His blocking has like gone from like a big problem to like he's just like shredding people now. Like that's if that is such a big thing. Like if you see a running back like commit to fixing their pass blocking that hard, this guy is amazing.
go whenever you get a chance. For those that are listening, go back, look at the big Darnell Mooney touchdown. That play does not happen if Bijan does not pick up the blitz against Nakobe Dean, and he stonewalls Kobe Dean. Go back and look at it. You'll see Nakobe has a head start, and Bijan just shows this is part of the reason why I was taken in the top 10, because I'm Bijan Robinson and I can do a lot of things. I want to ask you, is it concerning a little as far as the little usage of Algier so far? I mean, he's had 3 carries in the first game, and I think, was it 9 total against the Eagles? So he's only carried the ball maybe a dozen times all year.
Yeah, let me
is it concerning? It was concerning in game 1 when I was looking at the box score and I'm like, he only has 3 carries.
Yeah. I mean, I think like part of it has been like I think this team would love to build a lead and then just let Algier run people over in the second half. I think that's what they would love to do. Like I think that's his best fit. I think like part of it has been they've kind of been chasing in both games at this point. And so they're like, we need explosive runs. We need Bijan because Bijan could take it to the house like any carry. We know Algier is capable of getting explosive like 10-yard carries with his yards after contact and stuff, but he's not really having a realistic chance of taking anything to the house unless he gets huge space. Whereas if Bijan was able to get that same carry and get that space, there would be no question of him getting a touchdown. So
part of me does feel that in that particular game against the Eagles, the times of the game where Algier was getting carries, it kind of sort of felt like they were trying to send a message that they wanted to match Philly in terms of the physicality. Mm-hmm. And going back and looking at a few of those snaps, at Quinyon Mitchell, as good as he's going to be, Quinyon Mitchell made a couple business decisions in the first half. There was a couple times where these DBs did not want to tackle Algier because he was just trying to throw shoulders. So it's a run game, in my opinion, for sure, that is top 5 in the league, top 10 at worst. It is a really good run game when it's clicking on all cylinders. I just don't want to get to a certain point where we really are putting too much on the plate for Bijan in terms of the run game. It kind of sort of has that feel. I think in the first 2 games so far, he's had close to 30 carries. I know he had 14
on 32. He's had 32 total carries, through 2 games.
Right. And he wasn't averaging that. He wasn't coming close to 16 a game last year, at least early on.
We all wanted him to get more last year.
We wanted him to, but I don't mind him getting more touches the way he is. He's looked spectacular so far, but I also don't want to run this kid into the ground.
No, like, and I think like they're probably gonna lean on him a ton over this like first 6-game stretch. And then I think depending on how they come out of that stretch, they may try to let him like get a little bit of a breather, because like if they need to, like, especially those NFC South games, like they need to probably grab 2 wins out of those 3. And like they obviously have the Chiefs here. So like these are critical, like tough games. So I think, and like honestly, Bijan I think has had less snaps than Kyren Williams. That's probably the closest like example you're gonna get to how Zach Robinson is like traditionally wanting to use him. To me it's like, it is like a a calculus, right? Like, because I don't think there's actually any number of touches that would be too much where you would be like, I would like Bijan to get less touches. There's not really any like game sort of thing that you would ever want him to get less touches, but we're talking about like if this team is like a legitimate contender and we start to sort of realize that, I think at this point we're in the section of we need to win some games. This was the criticism that I had for Arthur Smith last year. It's like, why are you shelving Bijan Robinson? We're not making the playoffs. Like, we need to win games right now, and then you can talk about resting him later. But so I think he's going to get a ton of work early. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, I think if they actually get a chance to salt away a lead or something, I think they'll let Algier take over. Like, and I think the idea won't be like we're just going to run Bijan every play because he's our best running back. They're probably going to use him for most of the critical moments, and you just kind of understand that because of his dynamic ability. But I do hope that, like, they're good enough that we can give Algier 10 carries, like let Algier sort of hammer it home at the end when the defense is worn out and, like, you've run on him all day. Like, I think he deserves a role in the offense. I think it's probably just going to – his role will be more dependent on the game script probably than any other player.
Absolutely. Like his best role is letting him be the sledgehammer that he is. Like I said, I was a little surprised to see him only get 3 carries because I thought in that particular game as well against Pittsburgh, going into it, they wanted the only way you're going to play and beat teams like that is if you match their physicality, Philly and Pittsburgh. They didn't do it I don't think they did it enough in game 1.
The defense did, but not the offense.
The defense did. Yes. Yeah. The offense didn't, but in game 2, we saw them say, "Hey, our run game is good. You're going to have to defend it, whether you like it or not." So again, I was a little surprised to not see it against Pittsburgh, with Algier only having 3 carries. It's going to be interesting to see what the run game is going to look like against Kansas City. I also am interested to see just at what point of the game is it truly installed? Is it early on where you're kind of sort of just trying to get a feel for the game early on the first quarter? So Kirk may have 1 pass attempt in the first quarter or something like that. Or is it one of those things where, yes, they have a lead and they truly want to implement the run game to try to melt the clock and get out of there with a win? Like, when are they going to lean on it at some point? I'm very interested. Right.
Yeah, it probably has a lot to do with the opponent and the game script and all that. But yeah, I mean, I think we haven't really seen this run game totally unleashed yet. Like, even last week, like, yeah, it was very productive, but like, I'm sure they would have loved to run the ball more. They just didn't really have the opportunity to do so. Philly, like, held, like, against both of their opponents, they've lost the time of possession despite averaging a ridiculous amount on the ground because their opponents just held the ball forever. And part of that's the defense has not been as good on third down. And the Falcons' offense has been horrible on third down. I believe they've converted like 4 third downs in the first 2 games. So, like, if they were converting for third downs, they'd be getting a lot more carries. Like, it's just, I think it's like this offense is still very much a work in progress. But I agree with you. I think they would really like to make the run game a huge part, like, every week of what they do.
Right.
Just to, like, I mean, it's safer typically. Like, you don't need to lean on the passing game. You don't need to force this offensive line to pass protect. And, like, once this running game gets going, it's only going to make things easier for the passing game because then the opponent's like, we're going to have to bring that safety down. Like, and that's what the Eagles did. Like, that's part of the reason the Falcons won this game is because the Eagles had to bring a safety down because they feared the run so much. Like, the run was hitting so hard, they couldn't play a cover 2 shell the way that Fangio wanted to. They had to pull that safety down. And I think they also realized they weren't getting any pressure. So, like, the Eagles have, like, really struggled to generate pressure through the first 2 games, but, like, the Falcons' offensive line was awful last week outside of Jake Matthews. Shout out the perennially underrated Jake Matthews. This week they allowed nothing. Like, they were stonewalled, the Eagles. And, like, the Eagles, so Fangio started trying to bring, like, blitzes and all this stuff. It just didn't matter what he did. And when he started feeling like he had to get more aggressive with the blitzes, that's when they cooked him. That's Darnell Mooney touchdown, like,
and that's why in that final draft, in that final drive, he stayed away from sending extra pressure because, for one, they were in a 2-minute drill. Most teams don't necessarily blitz all out in 2-minute drills. But then at the same time, you're thinking like, well, you're Fangio. The last time I sent a blitz, the last time I tried to send extra pressure, we gave up a 42-yard touchdown to Darnell Mooney. So it's one of those things where he felt uncomfortable late in the game. Yeah, so we'll see. I, I will say this. You can look at the numbers. The numbers, a lot of people say numbers don't lie. Sometimes they do. But the numbers for Cousins when he's not pressured so far this year has looked pretty damn good, especially against Philly. It's looked really good, even when pressured. Or when he's not pressured. I'm sorry.
When he's not pressured. When he's not pressured. Yeah.
He's not pressured. His numbers look really good, especially in that game against Philly. So it's going to be interesting. But Spagnuolo is known for that. Yeah. Spagnuolo is an aggressive play caller. He will send blitzes whenever he wants to, whenever he feels like it.
Yep.
Especially when he has a defense that's giving up some plays, giving up some yards. He's probably going to be a little bit more aggressive than normal in this particular week because he knows he's going up against a quarterback that's not known for his mobility by any means.
Yeah. They're going to try to get to Kirk. So the Falcons are probably going to have to, they're going to have to lean on the run and they're going to need to do some blitz beating stuff. I'm sure they're going to try to lean on Bijan leaking out, chipping and leaking out. I think they're probably going to try to hit Pitts more in this game, not just because he's been a little quiet so far. I mean, I think that's unfair because he had the critical touchdown in week 1. But the target share hasn't been what people wanted necessarily.
Understand. Yeah.
Yes. But, we saw they were like, oh, we need to get London more touches after week 1. London went off, then it's like, okay, we need to get Pitts more touches. Hopefully that means Pitts will go off. But yeah, this Chiefs defense is beatable, but yeah, they're going to have a plan for dealing with the pass rush that's going to come from these blitzes. And the Falcons picked up the blitz from Philly a lot, very well, but the Chiefs are getting more pressure and we'll see. But I do think that the Chiefs are not a particularly good run defense, so that is an area where the Falcons may be able to slow down the Chiefs pass rush by just running the ball. That's the great equalizer. So definitely
most teams lean on that.
Yeah.
To counter.
It's a good strategy. It's a good strategy.
It is.
So yeah. Well, let me get to 2 real quick questions before we sign off from Jason Gaines. Thank you for the donations, Jason. Sorry I didn't notice these earlier. He says, Eric, thank you for getting Matt Ryan on the Manning cast. I'm sure you had everything to do with that. Matt looked very happy when Cousins threw that game-tying touchdown. Kevin, I should change your logo to ESPN Plus, ESPN Bet, or the NFL Live logo. Well, if I ever have time to change the logo, I will do that. But which one would you want? Do you like the standard one? You want the NFL Live? What would you prefer if I do change it?
I don't know. Don't change the logo.
Contractually, which one should I?
No, let's not do that. We don't.
Oh, okay.
We don't.
Eric let me off the hook. So yeah,
it was pretty cool though to see Matt on Manningcast and to see Matt kind of sort of illustrate the drive between the three. They were all just kind of sort of giving out little inputs, important inputs here and there as far as that particular game-winning drive. It was pretty cool to see Matt see that going forward, and I don't know. I wonder what he was feeling, honestly, on the inside.
Yeah, he was probably super giddy. I mean,
he probably was.
Yeah, he was like, well, he freaked out when the incomplete pass to Saquon. He was like, oh no.
Well, yeah, because they all said that in all likelihood they don't want to give the ball back. They don't have intentions of trying to give the ball back, and they knew that the only way to give the ball back to the Falcons were if they were to call a pass play, which they did, and it didn't go well. I thought it was interesting that Matt pointed out that in the 2-minute drill is when most quarterbacks are at their most comfort level, because of the fact that you already have a handful of plays that you're working on, that you're going to utilize. You know that the defense is not going to sub. You know the defense is probably going to be a little bit vanilla with their play calling as well because they don't know what to expect. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was interesting that he pointed that out, and lo and behold, that's how it played out. Kirk went up against a defense that looked as if they didn't know what was in front of them. They didn't know what to defend. They didn't know how to defend it. And Kirk looked as if he was in his, most natural state in the 2-minute drill.
Yeah, I wonder if they incorporate more of that hurry up style going forward just because of how comfortable he looked. I mean, they don't have to always be in 2 minute, but they might be like, maybe we just.
Would you want to do it this week?
I mean, they might. I mean, I don't know if you want to go hurry up against the Chiefs. I guess it depends.
How do you play? Okay. I mean, this is definitely we don't see the Chiefs often, of course.
Yeah.
We don't play them twice a year. So I'm thinking, how do you defend them? How do you game plan against them?
Yeah.
It's on both sides of the ball, but especially on offense. How do you are you I mean, you look at a team like Cincy doesn't necessarily run a ton of tempo when they play the Chiefs.
Yeah.
And they've been the more successful team, in my opinion, in terms of just matching their playing style and giving them better gameplay overall.
Yeah.
But they also don't necessarily lean on the run and lean on establishing that.
Yeah. No, I mean, the Chiefs are going to be planning for the Falcons to try to run the ball down their throat. I think it's completely obvious that they're going to try to sell out to stop the run and see how healthy Kirk is. Okay, well, I think their thought process will be, Kirk didn't get pressured against the Eagles. We can put pressure on him. We're going to try to stop the run and force Kirk to beat us with pressure in his face. And we think that that's going to be our ticket. Because I think the Chiefs really trust their secondary. They especially trust Trent McDuffie. Right. I think the other corners are a little bit untested. I think Jalen Watson has obviously had a good start to his career. And I think they're hoping for good things from Chamari Connor. He's been a huge liability in run defense so far. But I am curious how the Falcons do it, because I wonder if they'll kind of expect that the Chiefs are going to be selling out to stop the run. So they're going to open with a lot of play action early and try to get some chunk plays off of that. Especially if they see the Chiefs cheating a safety down or something like that. I wonder if they try to get some chunk plays off play action to open up this one. But I do think you want to keep them in nickel as much as you can, because I think, I think you want to try to keep them in nickel. So, yeah.
Even if they do incorporate a lot more, even if they do incorporate the play action early for the Falcons on offense, of course, that very well could result in a number of one-on-ones on the back end, because my thing is, I think they may go that route where they're going to want to try to, counter the Chiefs going all out by loading the box. I feel like Spags is going to counter that as well by, adding a little more to the blitz packages, even in play action, even defending against that. So it's one of those things where, yes, they're going to run some more play action, but Kirk might see one or two extra defenders coming towards him that he didn't see against Philly.
That's right. Yep.
So it's just, they're still going to be aggressive, even if the Falcons are trying to run the football and trying to gradually milk the game away with the football and incorporate the play action that kind of start throwing. They're still going to be aggressive in their blitz.
Yeah. Oh, they will. Yeah. So it's going to be a lot different than what they saw against Philadelphia. There's no doubt about that. It's going to be an interesting chess match. Obviously, Spags much more experienced, so I'm curious, how Zach Robinson, as in his third game, what his strategy is. But
not only Spags, of course, you got the Wizard and Andy Reid, Big Red out there as well. So
I think they're going to be expecting some shenanigans. I have no doubt of that. This Chiefs offense is going to be doing some shenanigans without a doubt. But yeah, I mean, I think two games of seeing how they use Worthy is definitely helpful, right? Because they're not going to be caught off guard by how they use him on sweeps and stuff like that. Reverses,
they're not
going to be caught off guard by that. Yeah.
In the rounds and 9 routes. That's all we've seen from him.
So, I think they're going to expect more wrinkles with him, but I think that he won't be getting, those wide open looks like he did in week 1 with people how are they going to use him? No idea, so it does help that we've had a few weeks of tape on him.
Right.
But that's another reason why I wonder if they'll try to put Hughes on him, because they just think Hughes tackling is so sure. If he's doing all these end arounds and they need Hughes out there to make a tackle to get the set for a no-yard gain or something, I mean, I don't know.
And we may see a little more of Clark Phillips this week, because Clark is not necessarily going up against bigger receivers more
Right?
physical receivers this week. So, the usage of a guy like, Kevin King, if he's on the game day roster, or a guy like Antonio Hamilton might not necessarily be used. Clark Phillips is a lot more quicker, of course. He's smaller, sneaky athletic.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah.
may be honestly, this may be a game where he sees more coverage snaps than D Alford. It
Yeah.
could be.
I mean, yeah, I'm curious. Yeah, because the Chiefs, that's one thing we didn't talk about that'll be kind of one of the last things we mentioned here is like they've basically been a base 12, base 13 team through the
Yep.
first two games, which is unusual for them. They traditionally run more 11, but they're going to try to get teams in like their base defense because a lot of teams don't have good linebacker play, so they're more interested in trying to get their better corners off the field. But I think with the Falcons, like you feel pretty good about the Falcons' base defense. Having those 3 down linemen, that's kind of their strength. And then having Judon and Carter, who Carter, to his credit, I think he's dropped in coverage really effectively so far. And just kind of covered that short zone. He's pretty good at that. It's kind of one of his like special talents, given that he's like a crazy athlete. And like you've got. It would be nice to have Nate Landman available. We're gonna miss him in the run game, but again, I think like they're gonna miss Isaiah Pacheco. And I think that's gonna help, Troy Anderson probably have a better game, is that he doesn't have to worry about Jalen Hurts being a quarterback run threat on every single snap. It's gonna be a little bit of a simpler game for him. So
I'll be honest, man, I'm not even sure if Landman would be of good usage in this particular matchup.
Maybe not
honestly.
this game as much, without Pacheco especially, yeah.
Yeah, like it's like this seems like one of those games where it may be tailor-made for a guy like Troy Anderson because of his athleticism and his versatility. He might be better suited for a contest like this. You can expect a little bit of everything when it comes to this Kansas City Chiefs offense. You're going to see plenty of personnel packages. You're going to see they're going to be aggressive on 4th down as well. I expect them to go for it on 4th down on more than one occasion, just like Sirianni did. That's just who they are. But the one thing that I will say, I mean, you don't need to be the most athletic unit to play and defend the Chiefs and defend them well. You just have to be very fundamentally sound as a unit. Because they are an offense that can execute in so many ways and so many styles and beat you in those in a variety of ways. So you have the tackling has to be sound. The pre-snap movement, not getting drawn offside, is going to have to be sound as well. Communication is going to have to be polished. You're going to, again, you don't have to be the fastest or the most athletic defense against them, but you have to be more fundamentally well-rounded as a unit as you take the field against this Chiefs offense, because again, they can beat you in so many different ways.
Yeah, it's gonna be a real tough test. Last week was like its own unique challenge.
Right.
This week is a different type of challenge. They're gonna stress the passing defense a lot more.
Right.
So I'm really interested to see how the Falcons handle it. But again, it's a tough opponent. They are home underdogs, which should tell you that there's obviously a lot of respect for the Chiefs out there. But I mean, I think the Falcons have a legitimate chance in this game. I wouldn't be expecting them to win it, but I think especially after what we saw last week, that there's a chance for sure.
One other thing that I want to add, looking back on the Chiefs' recent history, a lot of their games, especially in the postseason, a lot of their games they were won because teams gave them new life. Teams gave them an opportunity. You go back to the Super Bowl against the Eagles. What was the one play call that sticks in everyone's mind? It was, the pass interference on Bradbury that kept the drive alive and kept them on the field at that point. Going back to this Cincy game here, it was the pass interference. I mean, you thought you had a 4th down stop, like those, giving them life, as well as the playoff game between the Bengals and the Chiefs when Osai got the not roughing the passer, but got the late hit out of bounds call that gave them 15 yards and put them in field goal position to knock it through for Butker to hit the game with a field goal. So you have to be mindful of that as well. You can't give a team like this fresh opportunities because they're going to take advantage of it. They've won so many big games, not just week 2 wins. They've won so many big games because teams have given them new life and given them opportunity. You got to be polished on that end as well.
Yeah, and that that is a thing. Like the refs don't give the Chiefs as much of like a boost as like a lot of people say, but they do get like they are I think the most favorable officiated team. It's not a huge gap. It's like maybe 1 penalty a game difference or something. So I think it gets blown out of proportion. But like that is a thing. Like you can't really expect to get a lot of help from the officiating against the Chiefs. They're probably going to lean to protecting Mahomes more than anything. I don't think it's like influencing the game type stuff like a lot of people throw out there. I think it's more like Mahomes is like the biggest, most valuable thing that this league has, and they're going to be very, very aggressive in flagging people that go after him. And is that fair? Absolutely not. But that's just the way it is. So you have to play around that. And I hope that the Falcons are up to the challenge. All right, we got just a couple more comments here. We got Jason Gaines saying, actually want to give NBC's Mike Florio credit for calling out the broadcast for having Jason Kelsey in the booth for like an entire quarter. Don't understand why they decided to be so biased towards the Eagles. Yeah, I mean, it was unprofessional. I mean, but I think they were not really too concerned about that, obviously. I mean, I think after week 1, everyone kind of expected the Falcons to just roll over at some point in this game. And like for a brief moment, it looked like they were going to do that. But they didn't, and it kind of shocked everyone. And, I think it kind of obviously made it look worse than it was, that they were really, glazing up the the Eagles for that quarter.
You mean to tell me Florio actually said something
apparently
good?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I know.
He's been busy advocating for Kirk Cousins like he's married to him the entire offseason. Man, wow, that's
bizarre.
Crazy.
It's bizarre stuff, but
it really is. Wow, yeah. I'm gonna have to go back and watch that.
I'm gonna have to find the clip. Yeah, I'm gonna frame it. We got George Costanza. What's up, George? He says, I don't think Ellis gets enough credit. He's coming for that play at the end of the game, comes off the stunt, wraps around, gets into the backfield to force Hurts to throw that off his back foot. Hurts had the check down, but he had to rush the throw because of the pressure from 55. I see you, 55. Yeah, I mean, we did talk about that earlier, George. I don't know if you were here, but yeah, I mean, that was a critical part of that play. Like, because we know if Jalen Hurts is able to get out and move around, he becomes even more accurate, and not giving him enough time to set up for that throw did exactly what the Falcons wanted. I think they were trying to set that up. The entire play was designed to do that. I know someone was saying, like, AJ Terrell was beat on that play. No, like AJ Terrell's goal on that play was to bump Devontae Smith off his route, like Eric said, to make that interception possible, to give the gap for Bates to step in front of it. So
the one thing I will say, of course, the hit doesn't allow Jalen to follow through, which is why the ball was wobbly. But I will say this, going back as many times I've seen that play over the last 2 days or whatever, AJ did not play the ball at all.
No, he didn't play the ball. No,
the throw could have been there if it was a complete throw. If Ellis wasn't able to get the hit on Hurts, the throw could have been there because of the fact that he didn't turn around and look at the ball at all anyway. Yeah. And I'm like, it's a corner route. Turn around. But again, it's one of those, credit to Ellis. Caden Ellis is just a solid dude, man. Like, he's probably not going to make any Pro Bowls. He's probably not going to make any All-Pro teams. But I tell you, he's arguably the most, outside of Grady and Jesse, you can definitely say he's probably the most reliable Falcons defender outside of those two. Like, those two are going to bring whatever they bring. But Caden is he's always in the right place at the right time, man. He's always making the right plays. He's a really solid dude all around.
Yeah, he is. And he's honestly going to, I think once Landman gets back, they're going to use him even more as like a chess piece guy. Like we've seen him like that, play. Like he's going to be their primary sim pressure guy, I would imagine. He's going to rush from the middle. He's going to line up on the edge and loop around and do stuff. He's a very good pass rusher. I think they want to use him more as a pass rusher.
I
So
think
I think we'll see more, of that.
They may use them similarly to how Leonard Floyd was utilized on that 2021 Super Bowl defense with the Rams, where Vaughn was the ace pass rusher. Everyone knows that, but Floyd had a distinctive role where he was not necessarily just primarily an edge rusher. He was also playing in coverage. Was really good against the run that year as well. I think Caden might be kind of sort of similarly in that mode. He's not as athletic as Leonard Floyd has been, right? But as an edge rusher, for a guy that's played a lot of Mike in both his collegiate and professional days, as an edge rusher, he's pretty good at that too.
Yeah,
that's why he's more blitzed than any other linebacker on the team.
Yeah, and I think they would love to let him do that more and more often. But again, it's just like last year. They were missing Troy, so he had to play more inside. Right now they're missing Landman, so he's gonna have to play a lot inside. But we'll see how that develops once Landman gets back in the lineup. But it is interesting. And then final thought here, we got George Costanza saying, I know you and Eric will say otherwise. I don't know, maybe they will. But the refs simply don't allow the Chiefs to lose. I haven't seen this much favoritism since Elway. I used to call them the Elway rules. We can't win 11 on 16 when Mahomes gets all the calls. Yeah, I mean, we did touch on that a little bit, but yeah, I mean,
most times it is, Grant. That was pass interference.
Yeah, I mean, it was. Yeah,
it was. It what Joseph Osai hit him well out of bounds. Like he didn't need to do that.
Yeah,
like it's there are a number of occasions where I'm like, okay, guys, like these are penalties. I get it. We're upset, but like.
Yeah,
Isaiah likely had his foot on the refs are not making that up to he had his foot on the line. He was out of bounds, guys. Like it's just
you're just not going to get away with it against the Chiefs. Like refs may look the other way on against other teams. They won't against, especially reffing the passer. So you have to be real careful. And that's just how you got to do it. And again, is it perfectly fair? Probably not. But it's it is one of those things. You're just gonna have to work around it. And if you're good enough, you can overcome that. But it's really hard to be that much better than the Super Bowl, defending champions. But we'll see if the Falcons can pull it off. I think they have a good chance to do so. But I think that they're going to have to lean. I think they're going to have to have a balanced game plan here, because I think the game plan for the Chiefs will be, we're going to load up the box and we're going to try to make running as hard as possible, because we don't trust that the Falcons can throw the ball. We don't trust that last drive is legit. So we'll see if they're right, and I think the Falcons will probably come out planning to have to throw the football to keep up with Mahomes. I mean, I would think so. Also wanted to shout out Ray McLeod real quick, because I think him and Mike Hughes, those were the two guys I think that were the most questioned players on this defense going into the season, or on this team going into the season. Ray McLeod's not a capable wide receiver 3. That's what are we doing? And then the other one was, Mike Hughes, he's not capable of being cornerback 2. So far, both have passed with flying colors in the first 2 weeks. Ray McLeod looks like a very capable wide receiver 3. Mike Hughes, very capable corner 2. So shout out to those guys for starting out the season strong and showing that maybe this coaching staff does know a thing or two, perhaps, about the guys on the roster. Maybe a little bit more than we did. But we're not crowning anyone yet. We still got a long way to go. But so far, it's not been a problem. So good for those guys.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Guys, thanks again so much for joining us. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already. We really appreciate that. Leave a comment. Leave us that 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. Check out the Patreon. Check out the channel memberships if you're interested in supporting the show. Check out thefalcoholic.com. We will be back for a game preview coming your way on Friday, so look for that. Getting into this matchup a little bit more. And then, of course, we'll be back for the postgame show after Sunday Night Football. Another late night for me. But
these don't happen often either.
Yeah. George says, did you guys talk about the Carolina dumpster fire benching Bryce? We actually didn't touch on that. Should we get a word in about that, Eric? About that dumpster fire? Yes.
I've talked about it a lot over the past few days. But I will say real quick, he should leave, because the way things are set up for him now, it's not going to be in his favor. You're 2 weeks into the season. It's a long season left, and you just got benched. He's going to feel as if it's him against the team. because it's been publicly known that the head coach, the GM, and the vice president all voted to bench you. So he's going to feel like an outcast in that locker room. He's also going to feel that if you put me back out on that field, that the leash could be even shorter next time around.
Yeah.
He deserves a little bit of the blame. Yes. Developmentally, he hasn't done that. He's looked like a complete opposite of himself at Alabama. But I will say this, the trouble isn't there. The trouble's at the top.
Yeah, I think so. That's been the case like ever since Tepper arrived. So
it's at the top.
Yeah, it's problematic. I think, and we'll see how it develops, but it's a bad situation there because they probably feel like they can't trade him because if he were to go somewhere else and look good, they would be complete fools, which they are. But like, like they're gonna just trap him on that team, like, and maybe he'll get another shot, maybe he won't, but like, it's unusual to do this like 2 games into the second season of your quarterback. Like, I don't know why they didn't just go into the season with Dalton if they're like, hey, we want to like give him time to develop. We're going to let Dalton like get out there and handle these first couple tough games we have, and then we're going to put him in later. But like benching him is so bad. Like, and also like, I can't, like, it's just like, you can't wait like more than 2 weeks. Like that's all Tepper, I'm sure.
Yeah, what was it 2 games in for you to say, okay, I can't do this anymore? Like, this is what did you expect? What did you expect? Like, you gave him 34-year-old Adam Thielen. You gave him a guy in Deontay Johnson who's not a true number one, and you expected him to make miracles. Like, it's not going to happen. 18 games in, to me that's admitting defeat for sure. You're throwing in the towel. That's what it looks like to me. But so what was interesting, they didn't play him in the preseason until the last preseason game, and he only played a series.
Yeah. It's just a bizarre handling from top to bottom. And that's why I think this wasn't a coach's decision. I don't think that Canales chose to do this because I don't think there's any coaching related reason to do it. Like, but I mean, and it's like,
I think he did.
Really? Like,
yeah. I think he did. I think because man, when it comes to NFL, when it comes to news, I tell the listeners a lot, just read the tea leaves, go kind of sort of go beneath what you see on the surface. The initial report was, because the initial report named three individuals that voted. The one thing that I noticed instantly was that David Tepper was not mentioned to raise his hand and say, yes, bench him. So what that tells me is that, it could be a case where Tepper's saying, you know what? I saw what I did last year. I'm going to let you coach and be the coach. I'll sign off on things if you guys feel collectively this needs to be done. I think that was the case. I think collectively, Canales, Dan Morgan, they all got together and said, hey, I don't think we can do this. And Tepper was more like, my hands are off. I did too much last year. I'll take your word for it.
Okay. It could be. I mean, it could be the case. It's just like, I don't really see the point in playing Andy Dalton. Like, I guess they just want to win games, but it's like, that's not the most important thing. Like, nobody thought you were even going to be a playoff contender, not even a wild card team. So like,
you can't run the ball. You can't block. You can't pass block. Defensively, you can't create turnovers. You can't get to the quarterback. I don't know how many games you guys are expecting to win.
Right. So it's kind of like, I guess they're saying like, well, maybe like we should like take him off the field so he doesn't get killed. But it's like, that's an indictment of the whole staff that you put together a team so bad that you feel like you have to take him off the field so he doesn't get killed. Like,
physically he doesn't get killed, but his confidence is destroyed.
Oh, yeah. That was going to happen no matter what. If you bench him, that's not going to help his confidence. Like, it's like, yeah, it's just a bad situation from top to bottom. I think that, they have a better chance of winning a game with Andy Dalton, but like that team legitimately could go 0-16. I guess we'll find out. Wow. They're the first team I felt could actually go 0-16 in quite a while.
You fire Canales?
I'm sure Tepper will, but like, I don't know if it's exactly his fault.
He's done it 3 years in a row, right?
Yeah, it's like he probably will, but like, it's I don't really know exactly what you expect him to do with like a bare cupboard in the draft and, just, I mean, they tried to sign an offensive line, and it just didn't work. Like, I mean, I don't.
They were paid for it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think people thought Hunt was good. I mean, he certainly looked good last year. So,
and he, I hate to say it, but Bryce will forever be tied to CJ and Caleb because, of course, he and CJ were taken in the same draft, 1 and 2, and the Bears were able to get Caleb because of the trade with Carolina the year prior.
Yeah.
So he's already off to a bad start.
Yeah, that's obviously problematic. So, yeah, it's tough. It's tough. But yeah, interesting times in the NFC South. We got 2-2-0 teams. We got the Falcons, who got their mojo back against the Eagles, and then we had the Panthers, who are just trying not to be the absolute laughingstock of the NFL.
Dragging down the division, man.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, we could see 3 playoff teams in the NFC South if this continues. So, I mean, who had that on their bingo card? Yeah.
It's just stuff together, man. Jesus Christ. We're talking positive about everyone else in the division except you guys.
Yeah, it's wild stuff. But guys, thanks again for watching. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Want to thank Eric Robinson for taking the time. He's at _Eric_Robinson, working over at ESPN. Anything else you want to plug, Eric, before we sign off?
As always, I'm plugging the Falcoholic, man. That was my home for quite some time, and it's still my source for everything Falcons news. Falcoholic.com. Check it out.
Absolutely. Big plug there. We don't pay Eric for that, to be clear. This is a personal endorsement, okay?
Absolutely.
Eric this is 100% legitimate,
you know what? I'm definitely gonna, I'll admit this. I'll go this far as well. I actually utilize the Falcoholic more than I utilize ESPN.com for Falcons news. I know where to go.
No shade to Mark Ramundi. I know he's getting settled. Seems like a nice guy. We're gonna have him on the show here soon. But I mean, he's got a lot of ground to make up on Falcoholic.
He does.
We've been here, so
he does.
But he's got a good shot. He's a good guy. So but thanks again, Eric, for coming on. Really appreciate you, guys. I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin, as ESPN said, as ESPN Eric, as we call him, right? No. You gonna change your handle to that? Get the ESPN Eric.
No, I'm not. I'm not.
Okay,
it's already in the bio. I don't need to put it in.
That's fair enough. Yeah. But
That'd be good for the bit, but we'll save that for a later bit. But thanks again to everybody for watching us. Like I said, we'll have a game preview on Friday, and then we'll be back for the post game show, bright and probably early, I guess, on Monday morning. Because it'll be like midnight or whatever the heck it is when that game's over. But join us. Yeah. We'll be here covering all things Falcons on the Falcoholic Live and the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. Until next time, folks, have a great night, and thanks again to